at the time, the happiest I think I ever was in this whole journey was pulling pints of an evening and printing football shirts of a day on my own in my bedroom. And it's not because I'm a lone wolf or anything like that. I think it's because I was doing it and it was happening. And I was like, when I was pulling pints, I also just like loved the persona of it. Like I love just being like, this is going to be my story in a few years.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds podcast, a show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's show, we're joined by Helen Hardy, football fanatic and founder of Fowdies, the only official merchandise website in the world dedicated to players and fans of women's football. Born and raised in Newcastle, Helen is an adopted Manc, building one of the region's most exciting businesses right here in Manchester. Not only is Helen changing the way people shop for women's football shirts and attire, but she's building a movement to change the way the whole game is perceived.
My name's Helen, and I grew up in the home of football, Newcastle. I think it. Do you agree?
I think a lot of people might agree. Some people might disagree. Are you trying to say it's not Scunthorpe? Right?
We'll talk about that off air. So yeah, Newcastle, Geordie, absolute football mad family. My dad there's three girls. So my dad was desperate for one of us to follow in his football footsteps. And yeah, I just remember those early days when I was a little girl going to St. James's Park. Weirdly, my first ever Newcastle United fixture that I ever went to at St. James's Park was Newcastle United versus Manchester United. And we won 5-0. Wow. So what an entry point into football. My dad was like, right, you're my lucky charm. You can come with me every week.
And you liked it, thinking every game would be as good as that.
Yeah, I was like, it definitely wasn't. Knocked out on penalties all the time from memory. But yeah, absolutely love football. But the additional thing for me was I loved football shirts. And I love that from a very young age. Yeah. And I remember my dad used to go, Newcastle were really good back then. I don't know if anyone remembers the 90s.
Espria.
We were really good. So we were going around Europe and my dad would save all his pennies up and mum would begrudge him, but he'd be off with the lads to Juventus and Inter Milan, and he'd be all around Europe while we were in the Champions League. And he'd go to those street sellers, €5 or whatever, probably francs and different currency back then, and he'd be getting me the fakes, like he'd be bringing me back like this, and on the back there'd be a player name and he'd be like, this is Pirlo, right, and I'll tell you all about him. And for me it was like an education. It was like, this is the team we've just played. It was like a piece of history. I know that feels like dramatic, but it was like a story.
Well, it was weird as well back then. I remember like in the 90s those football players were beyond celebrity, because you couldn't really, like now you can just find out everything about them, but you couldn't then. It was like you only saw them on the TV.
It was mystery, right?
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, and my dad loved like football Italia. Yeah. And so Italian football in particular was like quite prevalent in my house, because he'd get a tape, like a VHS, and his mate would record it, because I don't think we had the channel, or maybe it was on a channel we couldn't, like, was it Channel 5? I don't even remember. Possibly. But he would have this VHS, and I remember Mum killing him because he used to accidentally record over family, like my christening or whatever with football Italia.
Yeah, with some random.
He'd give his mate Steve the VHS. He'd be like, use some this
random
one.
Roma game, yeah.
And it would be like the middle of my christening, and it'd be like, but yeah, just remember the football shirts. But for me, being almost bigger than the watching of the game, like I was so young that I wasn't thinking about 442 or diamonds and stuff. I was like, that's a pretty shirt and I wanted it. Yeah. And by the time I was like maybe 12, 13, I had like 20 football shirts and I would like lay them out. I remember I was such a loser. I'd like lay them out and I'd like know how to say all of the names, and some of them were quite difficult names. I could do like Totti. I can tell you a lot about Totti. My dad loved him. And I just grew up in that environment. And I think that was maybe like the spark for me. But one thing that was really clear was women's football was not present in my life. I didn't know. I couldn't connect as like a 10-year-old that I was a girl and therefore I wasn't going to be on this football journey. Like it was going to be, I was going to be cut out of it. I'd have to stop playing when I hit 12.
Yeah, you're always a fan, and that was it, really.
Yeah, like I would go at the Newcastle United camps. I didn't really notice that was the only girl. Like it wasn't something that was really present to me. I was always like, I remember telling someone recently in my garden, proper loser, but I know we all did it. In your head, you'd be passing to the wall and you'd be passing to whoever that was. For me, it was Alberto Solano, Alan Shearer. And I'd be thinking, well, when I play for Newcastle United, I'll be like the first woman that plays for Newcastle United. Like it wasn't like I'll be cut off the journey. I didn't know that was going to be part of my story. But I guess it builds up resilience. I guess it built up like another layer to me and who I am now, that I was cut out of football. Lots of people don't experience that. So yeah, I didn't play access football from the age of maybe 13. Didn't really go to watch it in my teen years. I was like really cut out from it until my 20s.
It's wild, isn't it? I don't think I've ever probably appreciated that, because you just take it for granted. As a bloke, you can just carry on playing, and obviously I was shit, so I never got anywhere. But you can progress very easily into 11-a-side, and you've not got to look particularly hard to find a team. Whereas I can imagine even just finding an 11-a-side team was harder than it should be.
There weren't any. I don't know whether like maybe I'm being a bit dramatic there. Little funny anecdote. When I was more recently obviously working in the women's game and working like in the media and stuff like that, I did some piece with Sky and Jill Scott, who obviously famous now for being the shit house in the England Euros final, but also Queen of the Jungle. Yeah. And we did this piece together, and she said, "Where are you from? I can hear something in your accent." She's from Sunderland. And I was like, "Oh, Jill, I don't want to talk about it. I'm a Geordie." And she was like, "Oh, did you play?" And we're about the same age. And turns out she was on that team playing for Sunderland alongside Steph Horton, Lucy Bronze, the greatest players basically to grace the English game. And my team lost 23-0 against this young girls team. That was women's football back in the day. Yeah. Sunderland were trying to find teams to play. They would play against my team, absolutely batter us, but that's not training. No. And Jill was like, "I remember that game.
I bet you were
shit."
Exactly. Thank you, Jill.
Yeah. So I think it's like it was so inaccessible, but even when it was accessible and you were playing, there weren't really games, because it was like the chasm between you and those teams was like 12 teams in the Northeast.
It's so popular now, isn't it? Like not as popular as it could be and should be, because I've got 2 daughters and they go to little kickers, and I can already see like the teams we can get them into, and we've already chatted about that, and I'm desperately trying to get them into it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in Scunthorpe, steelwork in northern town. Never saw a girls team. We might have had the odd girl who played, but not many.
And I think it's like being cut out of that journey. When you're young, personally, and I can't talk for all women, but you kind of don't even really notice it. You just go like, for me, I just moved on. Like it was like, right, well, that's obviously not for me. Like on to the next. Yeah,
it's only looking back now that it's like, shit, that's pretty harrowing, isn't it?
But also, what could have been. I'm not saying like was going to be lifting the trophy. Yeah, I could move over Leah Williamson. But I feel like you don't know what could have been. You don't know like had somebody been like, this is a journey that you could go on. Mm-hmm. This will end and you be able to get a salary out of this. Yeah. Who knows? I think like also on the other side, wow, kudos to that England national team that won the Euros, because the women in their 30s, there was no future. I heard that Lucy Bronze, when she played for Everton in the WSL, you were paid £30 if you played as a sub, so you could come on in the second minute of the game and you get paid 30 quid. You got paid 50 quid if you played the whole 90 minutes. It like that's one game a week, so you paid 50 quid a week. And she was playing in the top tier of women's football. She was working in Domino's. Yeah. I mean,
and the irony is the bottom tier of men's football at paid is probably more than that still.
Yeah. And I think that was the thing for me. There was no longevity to it. There was no future in it. I didn't know women in football existed. Yeah. My dad did try his best. And I know like he's the sort of guy that would be like, I want to find you role models. Like he is that sort of person.
Yeah.
And I remember when in 99, so I was 9 years old, the US women's national team won the World Cup in front of 90,000 people. And that was their turning point. That was their Euro 22 moment. And there was a famous photo, of course, of Brandi Chastain sliding on her knees with her shirt in the air. Famously, Nike sold out of white sports bras after that.
Yeah.
And my dad like left a little cutout of an article from the back of one of the newspapers in my bedroom, just being like, oh, look, a woman like playing football, like women winning the World Cup in front of 90,000 people just wasn't. I was like, that is unfathomable.
Yeah.
That is unfathomable. And when you think about the history of the sport and how women were cut out in 1921, it was made illegal. You just think, what could have been? Like, what could have been possible
where
before
could it
now?
be now?
Yeah,
And then,
it's mad.
And so obviously you get sort of cut out of it then at teenage age probably?
Probably 12, 13. Stop playing, stop watching.
And did you stop watching because you stopped playing? Like,
I think I just was
sort of
like,
fallen out?
right, I'm just going to move on to like other...
Something else.
Yeah, like what do girls like? Okay, cool. I'll just go and do that.
Pretend to like them.
Yeah, because I think that was what was like socially acceptable. And I think I kept an eye on it. Also, I saw going to Newcastle games as dad time. So I'd go and occasionally with him. And I think he really wanted that to be like our thing. And I was more dismissive of it. If the opportunity came to like be with my mates, I'd choose my mates over Newcastle United. Now I'd be like, Newcastle United wins every single debate, whether it comes to going to meet my mates or not. No offense, mates, I love you. But Newcastle United takes precedence. But yeah, I think back then it was just like I'm not accepted in this space. I'm not accepted. The other massive elephant in the room was I was LGBTQ+. I didn't know it. Like I knew it, but I didn't know it. I was a woman. It was like there was nothing about going to Newcastle United that wanted me there. There was nothing about being in that stadium, in that space that was for me.
Yeah.
So it was like, nah, let's go meet my mates, hang out with my mates. Yeah.
I can
it's a real
understand
shame.
that. Yeah, I can understand at the time why you feel like that. Obviously then you go through your sort of formative years as a teenager. Do you go away to university? What's your next sort of step?
Yeah, I moved down to London.
Yeah.
I think everyone goes to seek their fortune. And I went to uni. And when I came out of uni, I joined a local football club. And to be honest, my experience as if in London was like the hub of women's football.
Sure.
It's the hub of almost everything. It's the kind of like spark of most things. But this was prior, it must have been like 2010, 2011. This was like prior to inclusive women's football spaces launching, which has been an absolute game changer because it was like, can you play 11 aside? Yeah, I used to play when I was little. I was rubbish, man.
Yeah.
I hadn't played for like 12 years. And then they'd be like, oh, you're not very good. Right, bye. We don't want you in this team. So rejection to have like, to keep going back and finding another club and trying to find a lower tier club, trying to grow through a team, make friends, build a community was really, really hard. And I think the biggest thing was football for me was primarily about community and exercise before it was about
100%.
winning.
Yeah.
And so I was like desperate to find that as my primary objective. And then I found a club called South London Laces and they played on Clapham Common and we would go and watch the games in the pub afterwards. And I was living in a house with loads of lads and we were watching the Premier League all the time. And we were just around the corner from the first women's games being put on TV in 2015. So we were like on the sort of precipice of change really for women's football. So I was like becoming a bit obsessed now. Like I'm watching it every weekend with the boys. I'm playing it every Sunday with this inclusive team where I'm starting to make friends and build a community in football. And then, women's football burst back onto the scene and they played out in Canada in the World Cup. It was on TV at 2:00 in the morning. I was like on a Tuesday night watching us crash out against Japan in the semi-final. And I was like, wow, like this is so inspiring. And then in 2017, I went out to the Netherlands to watch us in the Euros, again, crash out in the semi-finals. This becomes a little bit of a theme in women's football, crash out in the semi-finals. But I flew out to the Netherlands and I just remember being like inspired by the amount of people in the Netherlands that were following women's football. at the time, the Netherlands manager, Serena Wiegman, who of course is now England's manager, Serena Wiegman was like this game changer of women's football, watching the Netherlands play. They were like, for me, the best team in the world. USA fans would beg to differ,
Sure.
but they were like winning everything. They were incredible. And the Netherlands fans would like paint their faces orange. They'd wear head to toe orange. We went to the final, Netherlands versus Norway, and it was like sold out at FC20. I was like, whoa, like this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like this is like,
And comparatively to the UK at that point,
oh, much bigger.
Yeah.
Much bigger. Like they won as well. And then the streets were like 2:00 in the morning. We were out partying with the Dutch fans, just like it was not just the win, it was like how big the win felt for the nation.
Yeah.
And I was like, if we'd won, for instance, we got to the semi-final and it was a really good team, that England team was really good. If we got to the final, I think it would have impacted the 2022 final because we weren't ready for it. We weren't ready for it in England yet. I think it would have been like back pages, England won the Euros, like here's a picture of them lifting it. But it wouldn't have impacted quite like Wembley 2022, sold out, 50,000 waiting list.
Because everyone watched it, like that was
the nation just stopped, right?
Yeah.
And I think that at the time, and like I get really emotional when I think about this because me and my sisters went together to the Netherlands. I went to France 2019 to the World Cup. In 2022, Laura was like, you were devastated when England lost the semi-final of the Euros in 2017. She's like, but this is why they lost. Like it had to be now.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so special. It was so special because she was like, it had to be here and it had to be now. And I was like, yeah, I was devastated. That night in the Netherlands, I remember being sat there and all these people, because we got beat by the Netherlands. So everyone was like, I'm in an England shirt slumped in a bar in Amsterdam. And like, I was like, oh, and everyone's like, oh, we're going to the final. And I was like, oh, England, man, why do we always get knocked out in the semi-final? Like, what's that about? And then a few years later, I was like, that's why. We had to be Wembley, and it had to be then, and it had to be 17 million people at home watching.
Yeah, it's that, isn't it? It wasn't just like winning the World Cup. It was the wider catalyst for what it's now doing, I guess. It's the change, isn't it?
I think that's why women's football feels so special to me. And I've never said this, I don't think, before to anyone, because I feel like a few years ago, I reckon if you'd asked me in 2017, Newcastle United to win the FA Cup, Newcastle United men to win the FA Cup, or England national team to win the Euros, I would have been like, Newcastle United. I would call it like, think like patriotism to Newcastle obviously isn't possible, but it feels like my hometown, my people were Newcastle United. Sure. So that was like the city, what it would do for the city, what it would do for the people. And I remember us having a parade for coming second in the FA Cup. How embarrassing. People literally like lined the streets like, woo, we came second. And so I was like, Newcastle without a shadow of a doubt. And now with bells on, the England Lionesses, and that's not because Newcastle United doesn't hold such an important like place in my heart. It's because of everything else that comes with England women winning. It's accessibility, it's infrastructure, it's like investment.
It's true change, isn't it? Like true, like, Newcastle winning the FA Cup, great. It'd be a great weekend
for the city,
but it'll go back to normal. Within a week.
Economically, like it would it would boost the Northeast, which is.
But it'd be temporary, wouldn't it?
Temporary. The change was unfathomable. So, like as a side thing, I run the biggest football club in Manchester for women, Manchester Laces. We have like thousands of participants across a lot of different accessibility points. So, as you probably noticed, South London Laces, Manchester Laces, so our sister club of the club that I played for in London. And the day that we beat in Brighton, that we beat Spain, we beat Germany in the final, we beat Spain in the quarterfinal, but that game was unreal. And I was there. I got a call being like, H, just loads of women have turned up at training, like asking, like just pair of trainers on.
Yeah, I want to play.
Like leggings, like baggy t-shirt. Can I play? And I was like, let them play, just find 100%. Space. We had this 11-a-side pitch for a 3-hour booking. I was like, let them play. They were like, there is no room. Like, what are we going to do? Yeah. And we just saw this genuine overnight growth in adult women's participation, and this spread across the nation. And for me at the time, and I still stand by this, I do think it's important that we like nurture and grow young girls, but like these women my age are a huge inspiration to the next generation. Like seeing your mum put on her football boots and go out and play is such an inspiration, surely, for like the 5-6-year-old girl.
Yeah.
My niece Abby, I wouldn't say I'm like the sole reason. She was of the perfect age during Euro 22 to feel ignited by that. I took her to the Sheffield 4-0 win against Sweden in the semi-final, and like I think she was just beside herself. But I also think Auntie Helen plays football.
Yeah.
Like Auntie Helen runs a football club, and when I go to watch, if my cousin's there and Granny and Grandpa are there, she's coming over to me like, did you see that? Did you see me do that? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you were mint, mate. Like that. Like that's I think inspiring the lost generation of women that didn't have access like me is almost as important as this young crop of players coming through academies and stuff. And I feel so proud of what we achieved in Euro 22 and the impact it had on adult women, young women, little girls. Like, oh, what an absolute game changer moment.
And were you still in London at that time in 2022?
No, I'd moved up to Manchester in 2018. So I was working in marketing at the time, and my company were like, there's a northern role, regional manager role opening up. Do you want it before we offer it out, and then we'll fill your southern role? And I was like, I'm going home.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah, but
nearly.
what I decided was, I was like, I want to go back up north, and I genuinely went ip dip do. I went Leeds, Sheffield, Newcastle, Manchester. I love Newcastle. It's genuinely like, I'm so proud to be a Geordie, but I don't want to go home. There was that feeling of like, I just felt like I would psychologically like revert back to childhood.
I get that.
Like it would just be, I go every weekend. I'm going today. I'm driving up to Newcastle with my partner, who's also a Geordie, today, and I love going home. I go like probably two weekends a month, watch Newcastle United. But I chose Manchester. I chose Manchester because of the LGBTQ plus scene, and because they are, and I hate to say it, the capital of football. I was like, they've got the National Football Museum, they have Man United women, they have Man City women, but also Blackburn Rovers women in the Championship. I was like, I'm within an hour of Liverpool women, Everton women. So like being able to access
so well placed for that
football culture, genuinely that like was my motivation. And I wasn't working in football. I just was like, I want to be in the hub of football. And for me, it's Manchester is the hub of football. And I know I joked at the beginning about Newcastle being the hub of football. My dad's going to kill me for that one.
Yeah, well, edit that one out for him.
Yeah.
We'll do a dad edit. So,
dad edit version.
So you've come to Manchester with a marketing job.
Yeah.
All happy and well with a marketing job at the time. What's made you change or do something different?
Isn't like, you'll know this, being an entrepreneur is a funny old thing, because I think that, I don't want to speak for all entrepreneurs everywhere, but I think that there is something in us, there is something within me that's like, why am I here? Like, what am I here on this planet to do? And I questioned it a lot. I loved my job, and also I was such a stable job. I had a company car. I'm an idiot. I had a company car. I had a good job. I was progressing.
Couldn't you've just been content with that?
Yeah, for God's sake, Helen.
What is wrong with you?
And I got to go, and you take your annual leave and you can go to watch football. Went to
turn your phone off, turn your laptop off.
Oh wow, what a feeling that was. And COVID hit, and I think this is a lot of people's entrepreneur story. And when it hit for me, I was put on furlough, which the company was a sort of stage school. I worked in the sort of theatre industry. So it was an industry that just shut down.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah.
And for me, that space allowed me to really think like about the why. And it was a positive experience for me. I know a lot of people, it was a really negative experience, but I was like, why am I here on this planet? What am I here to achieve? Like, how can I ignite my passions in this period? And I helped a charity out in my spare time to sell signed football shirts, women's football shirts specifically, to raise money for research into like the virus. And in like a few days, I raised like 25 grand.
Whoa.
And we did like it. We sort of had a Lucy Bronze shirt. We had some really good shirts. We had like a Lucy Bronze
Even
shirt.
so,
I remember
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, Mary Earps gave a shirt as well. And we did like online interviews, and we did like lots of obviously like remote bits and bobs. And I was like obsessed with it and just really thrived off the experience of doing it. And then at the time I was doing like a couple of interviews about women's football here and there, and I was like really passionate about the space. And it was during that time that an idea that had come to me during the World Cup in 2019 kind of came back to me and just wouldn't go away. And I was just itching that scratch a little bit. And that was basically
curiosity at the time, probably.
Yeah, but I think it was more, can I swear? Like, I was just like, fuck it. Like, I was in...
But that's how it always starts, I always think. Like, sometimes you just do need to, if you've, if you start listening to this, you like got an idea, like an itch you want to scratch, you have just got to think, fuck it.
Yeah.
And just start.
Yeah,
and see what happens.
The irony of it, I think, and I'm 4 years in now and have stability and have a monthly salary and all of that jazz. But like at the time, the happiest I think I ever was in this whole journey was pulling pints of an evening and printing football shirts of a day on my own in my bedroom. And it's not because I'm like, it's not because I'm a lone wolf or anything like that. I think it's because I was doing it, and it was happening, and I was like. When I was pulling pints, I also just like loved the persona of it. Like I love just being like, this is going to be my story in a few years.
Yeah.
Like I was a real believer. And I think it just like having that unwavering optimism.
It's like that unwavering optimism and that thought of who knows where this could go.
Yeah.
Like there's something real special about that. I remember that really well. Like I was doing some dual work as well as a startup, and I don't know, you're just busy beavering away. And I remember working on a shit laptop that used to turn off every 10 minutes and in sort of an attic room, and it was quite miserable.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is my, I don't know, origin story almost.
I just had this also like penchant for risk as a person. And like almost everybody that I meet, and I don't know about you, maybe it's because I attract them, are risk averse. It's like, I do not know how you did that, how you gave up the salary, how you gave up the job in a international world crisis. You're like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to like go and do this and pursue this.
So what was that original idea, the loose idea that you wanted to start?
It had come from, I've just thought this is foolproof. And that's basically in 2019, for the first time ever, all of the nations got specific women's football shirts, and they were stunning. Like, like the Nigeria men's football shirts, but like a specific women's, like the women's nation got their own. The England away shirt in 2019, I'd argue is the best England shirt ever. It was like deep red and it had roses like woven into it. I was like, it's feminine, but it's also just like so England, but I've never seen any England shirt that looks like this, like that deep red tone.
Was that the first time, it surely wasn't the first time they made them in like, for female body shapes, was it? Or
yes,
it was as well?
Yes, and also specific designs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But unique designs, men's fit and women's fit, but unique designs and
Purely
also fitted to their body. So the other thing was, when we were watching them on pitch, you're like, they looked really smart.
Yeah.
And it was like these elevated Nike and Adi in particular products that were just like, oh. So then I'm like, the football shirt collector in me is like, oh, I'm going to bankrupt myself here. And I still got a normal job at this point in 2019. And I'm going online like, right, I want England. I love that France away. I want the Sweden. And I'm like, right, where are they? And they were either, you had to be like Sherlock Holmes to find it at the back end of the Sports Direct website, or they just didn't exist, or they only existed in women's fit. And I was not really like into that fit. I wanted like a loose men's fit, extra large, baggy style. And so I was like, this is nuts. Like the World Cup's happening right now. And the homepage of every website should be like, there's no men's tournament, there's no men's Premier League, there's no men's anything right now. The homepage should be like Lucy Bronze in this gorgeous shirt. Surely, like, that's nuts to me. So I was like, there should be a website that all year round is dedicated to the women's game. Like even now, even then in 2019, like it was big enough to justify a few hundred units at least of like a website that had that offering. And other people probably thought of it, and other people probably toyed with the idea. And I was like, to quote Nike, I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And I, first of all, got the rights to WSL lettering. So when you buy a Manchester City shirt,
you could put the
at
name
the time, you could only get Premier League lettering, Premier League Lion.
That's wild. Like,
so the only club in the whole land was Arsenal that were doing WSL name sets, and they were doing them wrong. So what was happening was people were ordering the Arsenal shirts from the website, and then the guy in the factory who was printing them was like, right, they want Miedemar, whoever that is, and then lettering, Premier League, Premier League number, Premier League sleeve patch, post it out, and then all over Twitter I was just seeing like, oh my God, I ordered a Miedemar shirt from Arsenal, and they've sent me a Premier League lettering, and I was like, I would get this right every single time.
Yeah.
I would never make this mistake because I won't have Premier League lettering.
How did you convince them to let you do that then? Because that can't have been easy.
I was like, yeah, I'm VAT registered. That was hard. So that first year was all about proving the point.
Sure.
So what I was doing was I was buying the shirts at retail price, sorry. So I was buying.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I was going to the Man City store and I was buying a Man City shirt from the shelf at 80 quid.
And printing on it.
And I was selling it with the lettering on the back. So lettering for say 20 quid on the back. And then I was making like a 4% margin. Yeah, sure. And then I wasn't living off that. I was just proving a point.
Yeah.
I was pulling pints.
Well, this is it. Sometimes when you start a business, you've just got to do whatever you need to do to get that first kind of like, well, the proof of concept, innit? Like, people will do this if we provide it. Even if that means I've got to drive all the way to the Etihad.
Absolutely. And I think this is like, I think every entrepreneur that has done something
100%.
like great will have a story like this.
Yep.
Nike were not going to go like, Helen Hardy, come sit down with us. So tell them about your idea.
You want to sell 5 units a week? Great, yeah.
Great idea. Yeah. What a great idea. Yet have a license. Here you go. And in fact, my Nike story and my Adidas story, less so my Adidas story because I already had Nike, and so I think they were like,
Sure.
But when I approached Nike the first time via a LinkedIn person, it was like, oh, cute. Anyway,
wow.
Like no, and then it was like, a mate that I met in a bar was like, I know someone from Nike. I got 15 minutes with this person. And then it was like, it's a really lovely idea, but Nike are cancelling partnerships, not adding on partnerships. So like, cool. And any person at this point would have been like, okay, the business concept can't work because you're making a 4% margin. I was like, they'll turn this. I'll bring them around.
Well, surely your logic at that point is if you could convince them to, then your margin would jump from 4% to whatever percent. Wouldn't it? That's the whole point, right? It would make it a viable business.
Yeah, but without it, it was impossible.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people go, it's like, the analogy for me would be like, you're Newcastle United, you're walking out the tunnel and you've got Man City alongside you. Are you going to have the mentality of, I'm going to lose, we're going to get battered? Are you going to have the mentality of like, if we play our game and if we stay strong and if we continue and if we're steadfast, we can do this? And that's always been my mentality. Like, if we're losing, I'm like, we're going to win. And so when I had this call, she's like, it's such a good idea and I can see your passion, but Nike will never open a partnership with you. And I was like, you like my idea?
Yeah, that's all you've heard.
Oh my gosh, you like my idea? And then essentially I just probably was quite annoying. Eventually got on with partnerships manager, Fabian. And Fabian sat down with me for half an hour from Nike HQ. And again was like, well, we haven't reopened a partnership in forever. We're only closing partnerships. We're not opening new ones. But your USP is so unique. And he was like, and we absolutely need a platform dedicated to women's football. And he's like, and on top of it, and this is my stance in it, your Fanatics, your Kitbag, your Sports Direct, your Pro Direct, they could hypothetically launch a women's football platform, but it would still be, and I'm not being insulting when I say this, the white male CEO running that.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm here, like,
it's authentic, isn't it?
All I care about is like growing the women's game. So all of my nuance, all of my push, for them it would be like, right, tick that box. Let's launch prodirectwomen.com. Let's launch sportsdirectwomen.com. Everything I do is like authentic in this space. And as a result, I think like that's really changed the game for us at Foudies. It's really helped us to like evolve, and Nike eventually like invited us over to Amsterdam to their European head office, and we signed on the dotted line.
And at that point, so you obviously speaking to Nike, you're literally just going into it or ordering online, presumably, and then printing your own.
Yeah.
How many do you think you'd done? Like,
maybe
how many just tell them you'd done?
20,000,
Yeah.
and probably up to 1,000 units. Like it was me solo printing. I remember in a couple of instances, one day like Tobin Heath signed for Arsenal, and she was the big American superstar. And that day, and she played number 77. Who does that? And that day we didn't do an inventory of numbers. We only did an inventory of shirts, and we got like 100 Heath 77 orders in one day, and it was like the wildest day of my whole life. Yeah. And I was like calling the manufacturer of the letters, like, I need 7s and I need them now.
I need 100 7s.
Yeah, 200.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a wild one, but like we had little peaks like that really showed me with marketing and spend and what we're able to do.
Live events pushing that drive.
But it was just showing like the grassroots conversation around Foudies and what we were doing was starting to like really grow.
Still
and the big thing was
though.
like Arsenal were doing the lettering. So I was like, why is no one going to Arsenal website? They were coming to us because they liked our story, because they believed in us, because we were the same price, but also because we were doing it right every time.
Well, that helps well. But it is still wild at that stage to like be in negotiations with Nike. Like that is still pretty mental, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we were like, when we signed, there was somebody within the organization was like, you're the 23rd, 24th partner of Nike with a football license. Like they don't just hand them out. Like I couldn't believe that. And they were like, you could name the others as well.
Yeah, like their household names.
And then that in the first instance was like awesome. Like it was a bit of like a chest puff. Now I'm like, oh my God, it's like Mike Ashley and Sports Direct have a 20-year head start on me. Like I walk into these spaces, and I've been to these conferences now, which is for senior leadership. And I'm like the only woman in the room. I'm the only one that's wearing a football shirt. I'm like the only one that's like my age.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I am so out of my depth, man. But Nike, like, keep going, girl. We got you. Like, they totally back me and they totally support me. And it's kind of unheard of what they're doing for me and what they've done for me to support me. 2 examples. Example 1, when they released the Mary Earps goalkeeper shirt, it was only us in England that got it.
Oh, wow.
So like to give only one of your retailers, to piss off JD and Sports Direct and the others to be like, we're only giving this really unique piece. And the other one was 1999 Women's World Cup team that I touched on earlier. They re-released the 25th anniversary shirt, which was like, I was like, 1 for me.
Yeah.
Like,
we're 1 down.
Wow, what a unique piece. And I was begging them, like, you've got to give this to me. My business is named after one of the players in that team, Julie Foudy. You have to give this to me. And we were only one of like 5 in the world that got this shirt. And I was like, what an honor. Like, but Nike were like listening to little old me, I guess. And I think that was...
But it makes it, in fairness to them, it does make that way more authentic as well, doesn't it? Like all of that.
For them, yeah. I think like one of the big key moments was being at a Nike conference, and we went for dinner with like some of the Nike leadership. And they were like, you authenticate us more than we authenticate you.
I agree.
And I was like, I didn't. I was like, no way, man. I need you, bro. And they were like, we need you.
Yeah, but it wouldn't. Yeah, there's no other route for them to market, which actually is authentic.
Yeah. And I think like just on the Adidas side as well, like they are so good to me. Both like on and off the business side of things. Like, they know I'm a Newcastle fan. I'm always being like sent little like bits and bobs. Yeah. The respect that they have for me and for what we do at Foudies is like unparalleled. And they're a Northwest business. They're based in Stockport. Obviously the head office is in Germany, but like them being right there, it's become like friendships almost. Like I'll go for a cuppa with the marketing director, and just the respect, I feel so mutually like involved. It doesn't feel like I'm entering into a space where I'm less than, which is so wild because they're like the biggest brand in the world, right?
Yeah. So where is Fowdy's now then? So obviously you've gone from literally in your bedroom with a heat press, putting numbers on shirts,
Yeah.
to negotiating a deal with Nike, now Adidas. Like what, where do you send the shirts? How many shirts do you sell? Who do you sell? Like,
Yeah.
I want to know more.
So in our first year in my bedroom, I generated a £50,000 turnover. So,
Nice.
And I was buzzing with that.
Well, mate, that's great first year.
Buzzing with that. Made about £2.50.
Sure, yeah.
But worth it.
Prove the volume even at a very basic, I'm in my bedroom level.
Yeah. I wasn't saying
Still
I was in bedroom. I was like,
well. Yeah,
so the team in the office are working really hard.
I'll just pass you over.
I'll just pass you over to Tallulah. Hi there.
We used to have a live chat, which was someone else's name, and it was just me.
Yeah, we've all been there. I think they knew as well. I think they knew.
I think so.
And then we got investment from a local Manchester embedded they're based in Wilmslow, called Fearless Adventures, and they embed into your business, so support you immediately by embedding staff, like specifically in the marketing area, but also accountancy support, lots of different things. So all of a sudden, overnight, post-investment, there was cash in the bank, but also there was like 30 people looking at me like, what do you want me to do? Wow. And that was unreal. And so like it introduced me to email marketing, which I'd never really tried. It introduced me to the opportunity to do spend. But we actually, up until, you're going to find this crazy, so we're now going into year 5, like towards the end of year 4, we only turned on spend in September this year. So before that, it was all organic. That's everything that we did.
Insane, like an amazing achievement.
We wanted to. I wanted to because I think a sponsored ad linked through to an Arsenal shirt potentially saturates our market. Whereas now we can use our database to speak to our customers. Sure. So we can say, this is what our customer looks like. And there's like 20,000 plus of them. And you can then go, okay, cool. Like, let's pick out who this person is, what age group, what gender.
I think that's really interesting as well, because I think if you'd have pursued like paid ads from the start, it could have been a kiss of death almost, because you'd have been competing against all these huge names. For
and
that
also
ad
like
spend.
we were doing like 95% of our orders were personalized, and now we've turned spend on. I don't mind it so much, but now we've turned spend on. We're getting some blank sales, and that's men seeing a good deal. Men's football fans, people like me, seeing a really good deal on a shirt and being like, oh, blank Arsenal shirt, in the basket. And they're not my customer. I don't mind. Like, you are obviously welcome to use my service. But prior to that, 96.5% of our orders were personalised. So it was like, you are 100% a women's football fan, because no men's football fan comes on and gets a Lucy Bronze Chelsea shirt. Like, it just doesn't happen. So now we're turning spend on for the first time, going in year 4, and we're still hoping we can do our first £1 million year. And I think we're going to do it. Black Friday's the one though, isn't it? Like, that's when we'll really know. We'll really know if we've done it. Our last year, between September and the end of December, we generated more than the 9 months prior combined. So we're really in the thick of it now. And
it's going to be a busy few months.
I'm like excited, nervous because like the old saying around here, 2 paychecks away from homelessness can like rings true when it comes to small businesses, doesn't it?
It does.
Just want to get over this hump into year 5, and I feel really confident that I feel confident in women's football. I feel confident going into a Euros year.
I suppose that's the reassuring thing. Your business should hopefully align in growth with the growth of women's football, and that it is only going to grow, isn't it? So in theory, I'd like to think, in 10 years' time, it's totally mainstream, as is Fowdy's becoming as known as Sports Direct. That's the dream, right? Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't. It's not a dream. I think that's just the reality. Like we double our turnover in non-tournament years, like this year, and we triple our turnover in tournament years. So Euro 25 next year, the World Cup last year. I think everyone's like, even I'm a little bit surprised, but when you think about the stats surrounding this, women's football supposedly grew by 3,000% last year in terms of watchability. Comparatively, men's football grew by 24%, and that's just a population increase. So women's football is making strides. And do I think that'll last forever? No, I don't think 5 Euros time we'll be trebling our turnover. Who knows? But at the moment,
like we're evidencing that in a few years' time, it's not a little company.
No.
Like we're going in that direction. And I'm excited to be at the front of it, but equally, like I can't wait for the moment where I'm able to hyper focus on my area, bring in that person that, has that experience as a CEO to carry it forward. And I'm excited to be like, cool, can I get down to the creative and marketing now? Like this is where
Is that the bit you love most?
I love the psychology of human behavior. I love it. And like the reason why everybody was going like, will this business work? And I was like, this is foolproof because there is a key difference between the consumer of men's football watching and playing to the key consumer of women's football watching and playing. I mean, you spoke before we came on air about you going to play five-a-side once a week and everyone's names and it's like, it's canny, like, hiya, you're right, see you later, mate. And women's football, when we've done research into the players, their number one thing is community and connectivity and what happens off the pitch. Like for the first time in forever, women are coming into football spaces as players going, I want to access community. And what does that feel like? Because we've not grown up with this thing of like playing football once a week or going to golf with your mates. Like that doesn't happen in the women's world. It can be really lonely. Yeah. And then football comes along now and it's like, loads of people have come to me at Manchester Laces and been like, this is my thing. Like my best friends, people have married people within the club, but people have got married to people outside the club and had people as maid of honours from the club. We've only existed for a few years, but this is people's like entire world. And it's such an interesting thing. It's like how important women's football can be to the player and fan in that sense. And the tribalism, I guess, in men's football, which feels very different from the women's audience. So like all of our packaging is recyclable, as an example. Like when you buy from JD, it'll come in a plastic bag. We just don't do that because we know our audience, and like our audience will be like, oh, I just don't like that.
Yeah.
Like I think sustainability is a really important piece to our audience. So yeah, I love that. I'm so fascinated by it. I'm so fascinated by talking to those people, like talking to a growing audience, learning now about mum and dad of young her. Like I'm like, tell me everything. Like I want to do focus groups. Like I want to learn about our consumer.
Yeah, because that's where I am. I've got 2 daughters and
tell me everything.
Yeah, and I want them to be as passionate about football as I am. And, but in a way that represents them. I don't want to just drag them along to watch Scunthorpe United. Christ, I won't wish that on I won't wish that on anyone. But I want them to find like their own path. And I think if I look at their opportunities now versus yours, they've got the opportunity to follow it all the way through, and if they want to, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's a different world now for them, and I think they're so like, blessed to have that opportunity in a way.
I hope you don't mind me, like, and I guess the question to you, like, I feel like as well for some parents, it's an education piece to the parents as well about that support. Like as I said, I go and watch my niece sometimes, and quite a lot of the dads will chat to me pitch side about, they know I work in football, they know I work in women's football. And they're like, yeah, it's just no money in it though, is there? I'm like, well, I reckon that the top players are on 300 grand a year. And so, yeah, there is money in it. And that's only going in one direction.
It'll only get better.
By the time your 7-year-old daughter is 20, she'll have like maternity rights. She'll have like, but also knowing that football isn't the be all and end all. You can be the social media manager. You can be the CEO of a women's football retail business. You can be so many different things in the world of football. And so like,
and it's not always, for me, I wouldn't be encouraging them because I'm like, oh, they're going to play. It'd be like, I know what I learned from it. And it's like that the team spirit, it's the community, it's all those things that you learn as being part of like an 11-side team as you're growing up. I almost want my daughter to have that, like the team sport.
Yeah.
That I'm not asked if she goes and makes a career out of it. Judging by
scoring
coordination,
for United in the Champions League
final. If they ever
final.
get ladies, yeah, maybe. But it's that, isn't it? It's like what values can it teach them as a person, and that's as important, I think.
And there's obviously like this big stat, and I think like Billie Jean King quotes it quite a lot, which is around C-suite directors, and something ridiculous, and I don't quote me on the exact percentage, but it's in the high 90s, have played competitive sport, team sport.
That's interesting.
Specifically team sport. So your directors, your boardroom women have been in a sports environment, and that's not because of men, might I add.
No.
That's not because they've gone to play men's hockey or they've gone to do mixed gender sports. That's because the true meaning, I play right back for my team on a Sunday. The true meaning of togetherness is like lifting your mate up. Like, I don't do that during the week. You don't have that, like, so, like, I can't explain it. It's the togetherness that comes with team sport. And like, as a result, there's no space I go into not feeling comfortable because I've had to throw in that last ditch tackle on a Sunday. I've had to like lift my team when we're 1-0 down. We have like this dressing room camaraderie. Like, I saw a Leah Williamson interview recently where she was like, there is nowhere else in the world where you go, guys, I'm on period, can I get a tampon? And everyone's like, yeah, mate. And it's all like really, it's quite like an open environment. In a restaurant, you'd be like,
yeah,
I just want to be subtle about this.
I just need to go to the water closet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. In football, it's like, yeah. Like this kind of togetherness, camaraderie, community. Like, yeah, of course I can walk into a boardroom and own it. Like, there's no, that you lose that fear kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the stats back it up. You play a team sport and, you know, the outcome, the result could be, should be, might be that you feel comfortable enough to enter into senior leadership.
It's the things it teaches you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's Helen Hardy, the founder of Fowdies, being built right here in Manchester. What an inspiration. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and please make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss a new episode of the show. And don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded, and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager, Dan Brown, and of course to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.